Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. In today's video, I'm going to be doing the It's Finally Black History Month book tag. I was tagged to do this by the creator of the tag, Oshale from Oh She Reads. So thank you to Oshale for creating this tag. I think these questions are really great and a good opportunity to give you recommendations of books that I think are fantastic and books that are on my radar to read this year. But I will link her original video down below. Go check that out and all of the questions for the tag if you want to do it yourself. This also worked out because today I was already planning on filming a rec video for Black History Month, so I'm doing this too. Question 1 is, what book are you looking forward to reading the most in honor of Black History Month? Or rereading most if you're going to be doing rereads. There are 2 books on my TBR that I'm really excited about. I don't know if I'll have time to get to both of them or finish both of them this month, but I really want to and I will definitely be reading them soon. But the first one is Tender Beasts by Lizelle Sambury. This is her next YA horror novel, and this one is following a brother and sister. The brother has been accused of murder but says he's innocent, and I don't know, like there's a prep school involved and weird family secrets. We'll see where this goes, but I love her writing and I'm excited to see what her new book is going to do. It is out this month in February, so great timing. She is a Canadian writer if you want to go check her out. The other one is coming out in March, but I have an early copy and I really want to read it. It's one of my most anticipated books for the year. This is Where Sleeping Girls Lie by Farida Abike-Iyamide. She is a British author who's writing a YA thriller horror novel set at a boarding school with a new girl who's there and weird, mysterious things from the past. I loved Ace of Spades, which was her debut. It was my favorite book the year that it came out, so I've really been anticipating this one. I think the cover's great. I'm a sucker for a mystery at a girls' boarding school, so I feel like this is gonna be good. I don't remember if it's specifically a girls' boarding school, but it is a girl at a boarding school. Question 2. Do you have a Black History Month TBR? If so, please share it. This month, because I knew it was going to be so busy already, I didn't put together a specific Black History Month TBR, but I am trying to prioritize reading some books by Black authors. I've had a couple of books that I read or am in progress with that I really want to talk about, so I'll share those here. And then, of course, the ones I mentioned in the first question. One that I finished that I hadn't heard of and it just blew me away is How the Boogeyman Became a Poet by Tony Keith. This is a YA memoir in verse by a gay Black man, and I just thought this was so good. He's a poet and it's told in verse, but it is the story of his childhood and adolescence and coming of age in college, being a closeted Black man and what that looked like and felt like, and coming to terms with his own identity, dealing with what that meant for him socially and in relationships. It's captivating and I highly recommend it. Very, very good. Right now, I am in the middle of reading an early copy of The Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Djeli Clark. This doesn't come out for a couple of months, but you should definitely go read his works. All of his books are incredible, and this one is no different. It is the first novella in a new universe, and it's great. It's got a little bit of a historical steampunk vibe to it, sort of, kind of like his, I don't remember what they're called, but the Cairo series that he wrote, but it's different, but it feels like it's maybe in the same universe as that. It follows a woman who is a dead cattail assassin, and she's not a cat, she doesn't have a tail, but she's definitely dead and she's an assassin. So it's part of this guild of people who are undead, who are not supposed to have any memories of their previous life, and if they accept a job, they're always supposed to, of course the camera overheated as I'm in the middle of telling you about this, but we're back. She takes the job, and when she sees the face of the person she's supposed to kill, she has a memory, so everything goes haywire. I'm really enjoying it, definitely would recommend. Are there any new releases by Black American authors you're highly anticipating? Yes, there are many. The aforementioned Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Djeli Clark is definitely one. The Blonde Dies First by Joelle Wellington. I'm going to talk later about it, but her debut was one of my favorite books last year, and I'm really excited to see what she's going to give us in a second book. I don't even know exactly what the premise of this one is, but I'm gonna read it and probably pre-order it. I think I have already pre-ordered it, actually. A group of friends fight to choose their own fates in this trope-savvy, self-referential young adult thriller about a demonic force that acts according to the horror movie rules in the spirit of the Scream movies. I think it's gonna be great. I'm very excited. Hathor and the Prince by J.J. McAvoy. This is the third book in a historical romance series that has kind of Bridgerton vibes to it, and I love it. This one follows one of the younger sisters in this family who is gonna meet her match, and I've just enjoyed all of these. Something Kindred by Sierra Birch. This is a YA novel that's magical realism meets Southern Gothic. I love this cover, and it says it's about true love, the meaning of home, and the choices that haunt us. It's got ghosts, and I feel like it's going to be really good. And then lastly is Wish You Weren't Here by Erin Baldwin. This is a contemporary YA romance that is sapphic, and it's enemies to lovers at a summer camp, and it looks delightful. So those are just, I mean, there's more than that, but those are a few of the books that I'm really anticipating. Question 4. What was your favorite read by a Black American author from the previous year? I'm going to give you my top 2. The first one was my second favorite book of the year. This is Lone Women by Victor LaValle, and I am coming to love Victor LaValle. His work is so brilliant. This is a horror novel that is set in an alternate version of early 1900s, and it follows, I can't say too much, but at the beginning of the book at least, it follows a young Black woman who is leaving behind her brutally killed parents and taking with her this mysterious, large, heavy trunk. And we don't know what's in the trunk at the start of it, but every time it's open, people seem to die. And she is going off to the wilds of Montana to start a new life. But things kind of go from there. I love this. It's so smart and layered and paced in a really interesting way. I think his writing craft is just absolutely incredible, and the way he does social commentary and character work and plotting, I love it so much. This was easily the best thing that I read, but not far behind it was Their Vicious Games by Joelle Wellington, which is who I mentioned before. This one is like Squid Game meets The Bachelor. It is dark and goes some intense places for YA. I loved it, but it's got incisive, biting social commentary, and it follows a Black teen girl who, for reasons, lost her admission to Yale or Princeton, one of the Ivy Leagues, and she joins this competition to try to get it back, and it's great. It's so good. I've pushed this really hard on a lot of people, and everybody has loved it, so highly recommend. Question 5. What was your favorite read by a Black author across the diaspora from the previous year? So authors who are not from the United States. I've got a couple recommendations for this. Delicious Monsters by Lizelle Sambury was among my top few favorite books of the year. This is upper YA horror that has a dual timeline narrative, and it's about missing Black girls, it's about trauma and recovery, and it goes hard. Some of the horror and the body horror in this are like, whew, but it's so smart and so good, and the way everything ties up at the end, like chef's kiss, brilliant, loved it. I should say, because I've mentioned her a couple times in this video, and I say this in most of my videos, I am mutuals with Lizelle, so take my review with a grain of salt, but I really love her work. Another one that I was a fan of is The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk. This is a historical fantasy romance that is really a book about gender and reproductive rights and bodily autonomy, and it's really, really good. So it has this romantic element and fantasy to it, but it is very much about those larger themes. Like, that's what the book is doing, and I ate it up. It was great. Both of those are Canadian authors, but I also want to highlight a book that I didn't read in 2023, but I read in January of 2024 that I think is fantastic, and I would love to see more people pick it up. This is Womb City, forgive me if I get this wrong, but by Tlotlo Tsamase. She is an author from Botswana, and this is a sci-fi horror blend that is set in a dystopian futuristic version of Botswana, and it's intense but really, really good. And I think more people should have this on their radar because it's got some really interesting ideas it's exploring, and I think it's a very strong debut novel. It's set in a world where people are able to pay to have their consciousness transferred into a new body, thereby expanding their lifespans. But of course, with this, we get poverty and classism being an issue, we get colorism being an issue, and there is a ton of misogyny because the book is also dealing with thought crimes, sort of, or the potential to commit crimes, where they crack down based on algorithms of what you're thinking. Women are considered to be more likely to commit crimes. So some people, more often women than men, like our main character, have chips embedded in their brain that track their thought patterns. And I don't want to say too much about it. This is a horror novel, so it does get kind of intense, but I really liked this. I think it's exploring some really interesting ideas. It's also pulling in local mythology from Botswana, and I think that's kind of cool into the world building. So really good. Definitely worth a look. Number 6. What classic Black American literary work would you recommend to someone new to reading Black literature? So I've got a few recommendations for this that are pretty different from each other. The first one I want to recommend is one that I think is a little lesser known. I read it last year and I loved it. This is Not Without Laughter by Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes is known for being a poet, and you could definitely read his poetry, but he also wrote a couple of novels. And this is a really beautifully written coming of age novel. So it's a Bildungsroman, I think is the official term for it. And it's set around, I want to say like 1930s in rural America, and follows this young Black boy who is coming of age. It's very character driven. It's really beautifully written. And one thing that I think is interesting about this is that the subtext is that the main character is also probably queer. And I don't know that I knew that at that point in time we were getting books with that, or yeah, I don't know. So I just think there's a lot of people who might really love this and find it to be interesting. I thought it was beautifully written, and if you can get the edition with an introduction that gives you information about it, I think that's also really good. Moving much nearer in time, I would recommend The Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. I think that this is a modern classic. It is dystopian science fiction that feels all too possible. Her writing is just incredible. If you haven't read from Octavia Butler, highly recommend. Really, anything you try from her is going to be good, but I feel like this could be a good place to start. Another good option that is short and very accessible but hard-hitting is Passing by Nella Larson. It's not very long, and there is a film adaptation. I haven't actually seen the film adaptation. I really have been meaning to do that and haven't gotten around to it, but the book is fantastic. Follows two women who were childhood best friends, both of whom have lighter skin and could pass, if they wanted to, pass as white. One of them marries a white man and lives her life passing as white, and the other one doesn't. She lives as a Black woman and lives in the Black community, and it's so good. It's really interesting, and the way that the book ends is like, oh my god, not what I was expecting. So highly recommend this if you haven't read it. It's really good. She was one of the writers of the Harlem Renaissance along with Langston Hughes. My final recommendation is a piece of nonfiction. This is Sister Outsider by Audre Lorde. It is a collection of essays. She was a queer Black feminist thinker, writer, and poet, and this is a collection of her essays on a wide range of topics. One of my favorite things that I read the year that I read it, and it's so clear how her thinking about things has inspired a whole range of modern authors and thinkers as well. So definitely would recommend this one. Question 7. Who are your favorite Black American authors, and which of their books is your favorite? Okay, there are so many, but I picked some of my most favorite authors that I've read a lot from. My most favorite, and I'm sure everybody's gonna be shocked because I don't talk about her enough, and arguably my favorite author, period, definitely top 5, and that is N.K. Jemisin. I love her work, but my favorite book by her is The Fifth Season. I mean, that entire series is my favorite. It's the first thing that I ever read from her. It's the one that I've revisited more than once, and I just think it's an absolute masterpiece of science fiction and fantasy, and the way that like nobody else is writing like her right now. She is, I feel like this series is a modern classic in the making. The way that she does world building and themes and character work and storytelling is just on another level. One that is quickly becoming a favorite is Victor Lavelle. I've read a couple of books from him now that I adored. Lone Women, which I already mentioned, and then this year I picked up The Changeling, which is a horror novel with urban fantasy mythology elements to it, and it's just so good, really intense, dealing with fatherhood and postpartum depression and like so many things. I'm in awe at his ability, and he's quickly becoming a favorite as well. P. Djeli Clark is also absolutely incredible. I think Ring Shout is probably my favorite from him. This is a horror novella that is set in 1915, an alternate history version of 1915 US, with the Birth of a Nation film coming out and it being used as propaganda for the KKK, except in this universe, the KKK are monstrous in a whole other kind of way, and it follows a main character who is part of a girl gang that track and take down these monsters, and it's fantastic. Alyssa Cole is really great. She's written a lot of really great romance novels. Now she's starting to write more mystery thrillers that I'm also enjoying, but A Duke by Default is probably my favorite from hers. It is part of this contemporary royal romance series with Black protagonists that she wrote. The second book in the series is got a prickly heroine. It's a slow burn kind of enemies to lovers romance with a heroine who's got ADHD and a hero who is a Scottish blacksmith, and I just love this. Their banter is excellent. This was a really good romance novel. Nnedi Okorafor is a go-to. Her books are usually not my favorites, but I keep reading them because they're always interesting and inventive and creative. I think maybe my favorite book from her is Binti, which is the start of a novella series following a young woman from a futuristic version of Earth who's the first to leave her tribe of people to go into space to attend a university with aliens, and I loved this. I've mentioned her before, but Octavia Butler, love her. She just never misses for me. I think this is a contentious choice, but I think my favorite book that I've read from her so far might be Fledgling. That is a very unpopular opinion, but I loved it. It is very uncomfortable, but on purpose. It's her vampire story, but with some changes. Yeah, look it up if you need to, because there's content warnings, but this might be my favorite from her. Beverly Jenkins. I always read her new romances as they come out. She writes Black historical romance set in the historic United States in a way that nobody else is really doing, or very few people are really doing. I think my favorite book I've read from her is Forbidden, which I really loved. This is about a biracial man who's been passing as white when he falls in love with a Black woman and has to weigh the costs of what it will mean to be with her socially when he's been living his life as this successful white man in town when that's not really who he is, and this was really good. And then the last one I'll mention, even though I could keep going, is Rebecca Roanhorse. She is Black and Native American, and I love her books. I think my favorite book from her is Black Sun. This is the first book in a fantasy series that she's writing that's really interesting, and it's inspired by ancient cultures of Central and South America. I love this series so much. Black Sun's amazing. Final question, number 8. Because you should be reading Black literature and Black stories all year round, which is true, what books by Black authors do you plan on reading this year? There's gonna be a lot of them. Honestly, I do read a lot of books by Black authors all year round, and you've seen a few of my anticipated releases in here, but I also have some on my challenge TBRs, so I'm gonna go through those, even though there's definitely a lot more than this. Every year I like to set some TBRs for myself of books that I'm challenging myself to read. This year that includes some classics, some nonfiction, and some series that I want to complete. On that list, I've got a series from N.K. Jemisin that I haven't finished. Broken Kingdoms series, I think, or is Broken Kingdoms just one of the books? I don't recall, but I've only read book 1 in that, so I want to read books 2 and 3, and then I think once I've done that, I will have no new things from her, which is kind of sad, but exciting. I don't know. I love her books so much, but I do want to finish reading her backlist, and this is all I have left to read. I'm also planning on finishing a series by Octavia Butler. I have 2 series from her left to finish, and the books you see on screen are the ones that I'm planning on reading this year. This is interesting science fiction. I loved book 1. I'm excited to keep going. Then from my nonfiction TBR, I have Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin. This will be only my second book by James Baldwin. I read something from him last year, absolutely loved it, and definitely want to keep going, so I'll be picking this one up. I've got Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. This is a series of essays that she's written. I've also loved what I've read from her in the past, and so I'm excited to read that. Dust Tracks on a Road by Zora Neale Hurston. This is an autobiography that she wrote, and I've read from her before. I read the novel that she's most known for, Her Eyes Were Watching God, or Their Eyes Were Watching God. I never remember which one it is, if it's their or her, but it's a coming of age story. I read it in high school and it was great, so I plan to read that. And then finally, I have The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. Again, an author who I've read from before. I think that his writing is brilliant and he has written a lot of classics that I want to keep going with. So those are my recommendations and personal reading plans for Black History Month and beyond, and I do encourage you to find ways to incorporate Black authors into your reading all year, because this isn't something that we just do for a single month. If you are a sci-fi and fantasy reader and you are looking for more recommendations, I also have a video I put out that I will link up above that is recommending like 20 plus short sci-fi and fantasy books by Black authors that I love, and so that might be a good place to go and look as well. Thank you to Oshley for tagging me in this. This was a lot of fun and it gave me a reason to talk about books that I love, so win-win. And if you're interested in also doing the tag, go and check out her channel down below, and also all of the prompts are in the video description. Talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know any of your thoughts or feelings on anything I talked about in this video. And for your question of the day, pick one of the questions to give your answer to. Maybe what was one of your favorite books by a Black author that you read in 2023? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, it always helps if you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.